Hi everyone, Dave here. Welcome to the Fading Light of West Yorkshire, as I'm here to introduce our latest episode of Legends of the Spire. And in our effort to speak to as many former players and managers of Chesterfield as we can, this is episode number 59 of those interviews, as I spoke to Jamie McNicholas. Now, Jamie was at Chesterfield from when he was really young through till when he was a late teenager, and was part of that Mark Jules, Dave Bentley era of the youth setup at the club. As he got a little bit older, it was that changeover between John Sheridan and Paul Cook, so really interesting to have a chat with him about those times. I've had a few of his former teammates on before, people like Cameron Mason and Jack Broadhead, so good to get Jamie's perspective as well. Since being at Chesterfield, he's gone on to have a really good playing and coaching career over in America, and is now working with women's soccer teams over there. So really good to hear about what he's been getting up to over the pond. As always, I am at Spire Legends on Twitter and Instagram, and Legends of the Spire on Facebook, so it'd be great to hear from you. But I better get on with the podcast before it goes completely pitch black over here. Here is episode number 59 of the former players and managers of Chesterfield FC, this week with Jamie McNicholas. So where am I speaking to you from? Is it Indiana?
Indiana, yep. So I actually live, so it's northwest Indiana, so I'm about just inside Indiana, but it's like 45 minutes from Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm right in the corner.
And what's it like out there?
It's good, yeah. It's different. There's. I always say, people ask me this question all the time. There's like a lot of different. How do I put it? It's very similar to England in the same way that obviously it's same language, things like that. Way of life's very similar, but it's at the same time the way of life is different too. Like a little bit more opportunity in terms of like. Jobs. The weather's obviously a little bit nicer from time to time, but yeah, no, I love it. It's great. Yeah, I've loved being over here. So
if we go back to like the beginning, then, so like you just mentioned, you're a Nottingham boy, aren't you?
Right. Yeah. So I grew up in Nottingham, a place called Clifton. So lived in the same household my whole childhood, and then played locally for maybe 2 years, and then I think I got in the academy set up quite early, actually. When I was, I want to say 9 or 10, actually. I started off at Notts County. Wow. So their academy closed down maybe after a year, I think, and then ever since then I was at Chesterfield. But yeah, Nottingham, born and bred.
Yeah. So when did you join the Chesterfield Academy then from Notts County?
Yeah, so I think I was 11. Notts County closed down after I was there for a year, maybe, and then, like I said, I was in two minds of whether to go play locally or try out again. I think I ended up playing. I think it might have been Leicester. I went on trial with, and then Chesterfield as well. And then Chesterfield was kind of the easiest option for me in terms of just location, things like that, and type of setup it was. So I think I was there. Probably 11, actually. Yeah, 11 all the way through. Yeah.
Not too far to travel, is it? Was that down to parents and stuff like that then?
Parents, yeah. So it obviously rush hour traffic as well on the M1, especially, or even getting out of Nottingham was hectic sometimes. So we'd train twice a week, and yeah, it got crazy because it was always my mom that would take us, and 2 nights a week straight after school. Straight down the M1. On the way there at that time, it would probably take us, closer to an hour 20 maybe. But if the traffic's good, then you could probably do it in 45 minutes, really. So yeah, but it got hectic because my brother played as well for a little bit. So when we had like separate training times, so he would do the earlier slot, I would do the later slot, and then we'd end up getting back, 2 nights a week at 10:30. So it got crazy.
Nightmare.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, she was willing to do it. My mum was willing to do it, and it worked out well. So yeah, I was there for a while. Same setup all the way through.
Who was the kind of coaches then at the time? Was it kind of
Dave Bentley, Mark Jules, kind of.
Dave Bentley, Mark Jules, yeah. So they were the head of the. Dave Bentley was obviously the youth team coach, and as well as Julesy as well. But they were kind of the face of the academy, and as well as obviously all the different coaches. I'm trying to think of coaches' names that I would have had growing up through there. There were so many different ones, but Sean Goodwin. These are probably academy coaches that have been and gone a long time now. But yeah, main people were Dave Bentley, Mark Jules.
And I suppose when you're there from like 11, you kind of get to know them like in and out, don't you? I suppose if you're there for.
Yeah. So my early days was obviously I would see them in the distance, but not too much crazy interaction with them. But by the time I was, 14, 15, 16, they're around everyone. You get to know them pretty well. So especially, and it's good leading into the youth team. It's you get to know who they are and kind of what their expectations are. So yeah, they were always around.
I suppose that's something then you've kind of used that experience in your own coaching now, I suppose, haven't you? In terms of how to build relationships with kids when they're kind of growing up and everything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's for me. It's a lot of it is the biggest thing I take away from a player and just being around different coaches and playing back at home and then playing college over here. It's a lot of it's relationship based. You've got to know your players, especially with me being on the women's side. It's a little different. They're built a bit differently than a men's program, so it's a lot of it's relational. You have to know your players. You have to know, and it helps you in the long run too. So
yeah. So when you got to that point of so when you get to like 16 and you get to that point of getting a bit of a contract and stuff, what was all that like at the time?
It can be I mean, it's the same every year. When you're in academy, you sit down, have your assessments at the end of each year, and they decide whether they want you around still, or they give you ideas on what to improve on, or if they don't see you as a fit at the club anymore. But yeah, especially that 16-year-old heading into a youth team age is very can be frustrating and a very anxious time because you're not sure which way it's going to go. But the way it worked out for us was we had a good group of players at the time, and I think we ended up playing a game, and they kind of let us know at the time. They gave us like a letter, I think I want to say, after the game, with different times of meetings, and they would sit us down and kind of tell us what's happening from there. But no, it can be an anxious time, especially when you don't know which way it's going to go. And all the guys are on the same page as well. So yeah, it's a fun but anxious time for sure.
There's a program on TV at the moment over here on Channel 4 about the Crystal Palace Youth Academy, and all of those players are kind of from like 10, 11 up to kind of 15, 16, and it shows a lot of those meetings where the player kind of goes in with their parents and they have that like right, well, and you kind of see in that program as well of how people having growth spurts at different times and things like that, and kind of the growing pains that you'll get and how that affects form and things like that. There's a lot of pressure, isn't there? If and I suppose it's how players and families and things like that can kind of handle that pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. I mean, the way it's set up in England is with the academy setups, I think they ran very well, and they ran in terms of development of players and things like that. But no, it can be a very pressure situation. You've got kids that have dreams of playing professional football, and it can from year to year you don't know what's going to happen. So you've got to keep just getting your head down. I suppose in a good way, it can add good pressure too. That decision's coming at the end of a year, and that at any moment it can be taken away from you. So in terms of pushing yourself a little bit more and staying the extra little bit of training and doing bits on your own time to become the player to do what it takes to become a good player is pushes you on in good pressure as well. But yeah, when that meeting comes around, I remember times where, and there's obviously different reasons for people letting go. You know, you have friends that come into a club and then leave, you know, a year later just because it hasn't quite worked out for them for whatever reason that may be. But and when you see that, and then when you go into the meeting with your own parents, it's a pressure situation. It's a nervous situation, but it builds your character also. They're good meetings to have.
Mm-hmm. Crikey. So describe yourself as like a player then at that time. So you're a defender, right?
Defender, yeah. So growing up, I actually, as I went into the 11-a-side game, growing up, I was always a centre back. So I think one thing most people and teammates will always say about me is that my ability to use both feet from a young age. I was always able to do that, and I think a lot of that just goes down to being on the ball when I was younger, but also playing at centre back and having to use both feet. And as time got on, I didn't grow enough to be a centre back, so I kind of moved into the full back role. And to be honest, I kind of played different sides, more probably more left back than right back, but I did both roles. But no, I love playing there. I think for me, it's the best position to play because you're involved in everything. You know, you're involved, especially with how the game's played today. You're always involved defensively as a defender, and then you're always looking for ways to get forward and get on the ball. So I would describe myself as a player and a fullback that liked to get forward, and that I think that was added on to my game more and more with the older I got. But yeah, I'm just consistent. You know, both feet, can do a little bit of everything. Not crazy good at one particular part of my game, but just, consistently good above like all kind of attributes what it takes to be a good fullback at that level. So
yeah. And so talk us through some of the players in that kind of youth team when you got to like between that 16-18 age, because like we had Cameron Mason, who was obviously keeper we've had on the podcast, and Jack Broadhead, who would have been in defence with you, and I think there was a young Lawrence Maguire then as well, wasn't there, who was just starting to appear, and Jake Beasley, who was obviously had a good career out of it.
Yeah,
it was a good little, not a bad little team, was it?
It was. No, we had a good group. When I first went in there as on my first year in the youth team, so my group was obviously Cameron Mason was my group. He came in later, I think, so he wasn't involved in the academy setup. He actually got signed right before his. I think he must have got released from somewhere else and then managed to get a contract at Chesterfield. I can't remember what that was. I'm sure he spoke about it. But so he was in my group. Alex Hewitt, so Jamie Hewitt's son, he was around for, in my group, and then there's a few others, Regan Eldridge, Oliver Brock. Kind of lost contact with a few of those guys now, but that was kind of my year. The year above me was like, Jack Broadhead, other good players like Josh Scully. Those guys had a lot of potential, and then it was really the ones that obviously, like you said, pushed on a little bit more was the year younger than me, and Lawrence Maguire, Jake Beasley. They ended up getting contracts after the youth team. But yeah, we had a lot of talent in that group also, like Lewis Sugden, Mason Coy. It was a talented group throughout those 3 years, that 3 age groups that I was a part of. It was a talented group.
Yeah. And did you? I suppose you all kind of socialized a bit with each other and stuff, and got to know each other. It's kind of an odd situation, isn't it? When I suppose you're doing bits of college as well at the time and things like that.
Yeah. No, you naturally with the way it's set up. It's training every day. You're going to college twice a week or whatever it was at the time. I can't remember what it is, but naturally you're kind of the people who you're around for the majority of your day, so you get to know them quick. Obviously a lot of different banter in the training and like the changing room and things like that, so it's a fun environment to be in, as well as a competitive. The guy next to me is my best friend, but he's also someone that might come and take my spot, so it's a competitive environment, but it's good. You get to learn real good, and you get real good friends with him. I've had some good friends. One that I actually didn't mention was Jordan Walshaw. He was a year younger than me. He's probably one of the ones out of all of them that I've probably kept close contact with, and that's probably partly to do with he's also in the US right now. So yeah, you make some friends long term as well, but at the time you're around them all the time. So yeah, you almost have to become good friends with them, or have to get to know them.
Yeah, and it was an interesting time around then, wasn't it? Because so it would have been the 2012-13 season, which was when John Sheridan left and Paul Cook first came in,
right?
After they'd been relegated from League One that previous season, and then the season after it was when they won the title under Paul Cook. So obviously went quite well, didn't they, in 13-14 season? But around that time, again, I noticed that was when like the reserve team kind of got pulled, didn't it? So I don't think there was a reserve team at the time, which obviously for a young player coming through, and then, you know, if you've got a successful first team, it's nice to be able to take part in those reserve games and things, isn't it?
Yeah, no, for me at the time it was probably a different, especially the end, like you said, the end of my first year heading into a second year, it was a difficult time for me because just the aspects of it, like you said, you know, you hear all the time in football that it's kind of right place, right time a little bit too, as well as working hard. But I thought I had a really good first year. I ended up actually playing towards the second half of the season, like after Christmas time. I was involved in the reserves quite regularly, actually. So I was playing youth team games as well as reserve games and traveling with them. So that was a fun time for me, and kind of feeling like I was pushing on with the club and trying to make a impression. And then I actually won Young Player of the Year that year as well. So for me, at the end of the first year, it was hopes were high, kind of, in terms of moving forward and trying to push on and earn myself a professional contract. But with the, you know, for whatever reason, the changes in the club, because not only at the time was it a change in the gaffer, like you said, like John Sheridan got sacked, and then Paul Cook came in. But not only that, it was a whole coaching staff. So we had a change in youth team manager and a change in academy manager. The whole backroom staff, apart from maybe one or two, was completely different. So it almost felt like for us as a youth team that we were, and especially again with limited chances to impress in the reserve setup, it was a difficult time for us because it was almost starting from scratch. So it was tough. Obviously, different things, but you know, I had a good second year that year, and it wasn't meant to be at the time. But yeah, it was a difficult time for me, and I know a few of the other lads in general. But that's football; things change. And I think it was a difficult time for the club at the time with getting relegated that year too. So there was a lot of change, especially between my first and second year.
Yeah, I think Jack Broadhead, I think it probably was that spoke about that, how he felt that, I mean, he ended up getting a contract, didn't he? But I think he felt that that when they did have the coaching changes, that group of players then felt that they weren't like the new team's obviously players.
Yeah,
the new players kind of come in, don't they? So it can be a awkward.
Yeah, because at the time I remember him being, obviously, so my second year he was a first year pro, and we were still around him as much as we probably would have been the year before. But I remember it being a difficult time for him as well as especially us second year guys, or even the first year guys. That whole youth team that year was, I think from early on we knew that there was a new coaching staff in place, and it was going to be difficult to kind of win them over a little bit because they kind of wanted to do it their own way. You know, which is, again, you say it all the time, it's football, things change. You know, they have ideas of what they want to do, and that's what they were going to do with it. And I think it seemed like from early on that they kind of wanted to get their own players in. So I wouldn't say they didn't give us a chance, but it felt like we were coming from, you know, a step below than we was before. And I can imagine with Jack Broadhead getting a first year pro after, and then a change in manager, that must have, you know, it was probably difficult for him too. In fact, I know it was, because I remember using to speak about it.
So what other stuff were you kind of involved with at the time then? Did you have to do any of the kind of cleaning boots for the first team players and ball boy duties and things like that?
Yeah. So ball boys, cleaning boots, getting all the equipment ready, making sure changing rooms are clean, things like that. So all the different odd jobs that that people don't generally see in terms of what needs to be done. Youth team clubs all over the country youth teams all over the country are exactly the same. So we were, making sure the balls are pumped before training, making sure they're clean, making sure the equipment, especially for the first team, is ready to go. I was actually on, I can't remember if it was both years, but at least for my second year, I was on. You basically have you get given a player to clean their boots, and I was given Sam Hurd at the time.
Nice.
So yeah, I was on his boots, and you just different odd jobs around. But then ball boys was another big one as well. We used to ball boy all first team home games that we could.
Did Sam give you a good Christmas tip or anything like that at the time?
He did, yeah. I can't remember exactly what it was now, but yeah, I think different first team players had different ways of going about it. But no, he was one of the ones that was definitely appreciative of doing what I was doing. But it was, it's almost an expectation as well at the same time. Like you're in a youth team, you're trying to earn your stripes a little bit, and as long as you do a good job, I feel like most of the first team are pretty generous with handing off the little Christmas tips. So yeah.
Good.
Right.
I've not had him on the podcast yet, but hopefully at some point. It's obviously with I think he's at Bolton with Ian Evatt now, I think, as one of their first team coaches. So then obviously you got released, didn't you? At the end of that. So
yeah,
had a few players on that have kind of been in that position, and how it can kind of knock the stuffing out of you for a bit. Kind of how was it for you when that all happened?
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, kind of linking into what we were just previously speaking about. I think a lot of us, it was almost towards the end of that second year, it was almost like I think for a few of us, probably, myself, maybe Alex Hewitt, Cameron Mason for sure, who was involved a lot in first team stuff. It was a case where there was a little bit of hope still inside there, but we almost saw it coming at the same time. So I know my group, without a doubt, we were called out all on the same page. I remember us being called to a meeting at the back end of the stadium, and we just have individual meetings. They call us up one by one. So it was a weird situation because we'd go up, we'd talk to the coaches, and come back down, and then all the lads are there as well, just kind of asking how it went. And one by one, you start to see people like not offered a contract, they've been released. So I think for any young player at that stage of their career, if they're wanting to burst into a professional contract, no matter how much we maybe saw it coming, it can still be difficult. It's something you've dreamed of for a whole childhood, wanting to play professional football, and for that not to happen, it has a knock-on effect. But for me, it was, I think I'm trying to remember for the time really, but it was maybe a month or so that I was kind of in my own head a little bit, and then after that, you just have to get on with it. I ended up playing semi-pro for a little bit before coming to the US, but it's the biggest thing out of all of it is not necessarily the rejection of it. It's more the change in lifestyle, because you go from training every day, going to college. You've done that now for 2 years, and it's what it becomes your identity almost. Your identity is being a footballer.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you have your college, education, but at that point, most people that you've left high school with was they've gone on to university, they've gone on to do all these other things, and you're not, I wouldn't say you're behind, but it becomes something where you don't really know what to do with yourself. So I think the biggest like the hardest thing about it was the change in identity and trying to figure out what the next steps are.
So how quickly did the move to America come about then?
So I came out a year later. So I had an opportunity to come out as soon as I got released from the club. And at first it wasn't really something that I wanted to do. I wasn't interested in going to the other side of the country just to kind of carry on playing. And I wanted to give semi-pro a little chance as well. So I ended up playing at Hina Town for a little bit.
Yeah.
As well as I picked up a job for, I'm not sure for how long, but I was working in Morrison's as a cashier for a little bit, which was a whole new thing for me. And then I ended up playing majority of my semi-pro at Basford in like the fifth tier of non-league football, I want to say, something like that. And it was a good experience. You go from playing with youth team players, and like I said, I had a little bit of experience with the reserves, but you're now playing with, the brutal side of the semi-pro game, and you're a young 18-year-old trying to prove yourself in it. That in itself can be difficult. Just you're playing against fully grown men, and you're not quite there yet. So I enjoyed my time there, but I think at that point with playing semi-pro, working in Morrison's, I obviously, wasn't really enjoying that. I didn't really know what my next stage in terms of a career was if the football inside didn't work out. So I got approached again, actually, with someone who I played with at Basford to come out to America. And I thought, I'm just going to give it a chance. And if I don't like it, I can always come back. It's not a big deal. But no, I think it was a process at first in terms of changing over to the lifestyle over here and the type of college that I went to. But once you get used to it, there's I love it over here. So but yeah, it was a year later. So I got released at 18 and I came over when I was 19.
So at the time, was it a bit like, oh, I'll go for a year and give it a chance, or I'll go for 6 months and give it a chance, and then? Yeah,
I think so. For me, in my mind, when I was coming over, I came home with another lad that was going to the same college as me that got released from Grimsby at the time. So I'd played against him, knew of him, but we became somewhat close at that period of time as well. And for me, it was let's give this a try. I'm kind of at that point, I was sick of working in Morrison's, and I was ready for something a little bit different. So I was looking forward to it. I was excited to kind of experience what it was, but I think somewhere in the back of my mind was always a case of, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I can come home. Like you said, I give it 6 months, a year, and if I'm not enjoying it, that's kind of my decision made. But it actually did take me longer than that to really get used to it. I remember, 18 months, maybe 2 years into it, I was thinking about pulling the plug and coming back home, just because of the type of environment it was at my college at the time. It was just a different area than what I was used to. I went to a real small college over here, and kind of in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, and it was hard for me to get used to. But after those 2 years, I never looked back. So probably one of the best decisions I've ever made coming over to America, I would say.
Yeah. Does it take a while for them to? I mean, obviously you've not got an accent. You're not like a strong Northeast accent or anything like that. So, but I suppose it's still kind of a novelty for some people, I suppose, in America.
Yeah, no, I mean, people love it. Yeah, people love it, but they love the accent. They love hearing it. But at the time when I went over, we was actually at my college. So first of all, my coach that recruited me over here was English. So he was an English guy that's been over here for a while, and then I think at one point we probably had like 10 English lads on the team. So which is getting more and more common now. So it was it takes people at the college at the time. It took people, they love to hear it every day. You're always going to have someone come up to you saying, I love your accent and things like that. But I can imagine some guys at schools where, maybe they may be the only English lad, they probably get a lot more attention.
So what were you doing then at the start? Was it a mixture of kind of playing, and did you get involved in a bit of coaching or anything like that when you first started, or was it pretty much just doing bits of playing and stuff?
It was just playing, yeah. So what a season looks like over there. They do very short seasons over here. So it's like I got there in August, start of the school year, and your season's really from end of August to beginning mid-November. So you play a lot of games in a short period of time. as well as doing your education and that being quite intense. And then in the spring, you're going for Christmas, come back from January to May time. It's you will be doing stuff on the ball, but it's more kind of physical fitness, and you're in the weight room quite a lot. As well as your education stuff. But so it's more education and playing. There are opportunities in little bits, to maybe do youth camps for the school, or go and work over the summer and play over the summer and kind of do that side of it. So I got involved in coaching, but it was never really until I graduated college that I picked up coaching a little bit more.
When you did start moving into a bit of coaching, were you starting off with the really little kids, or were they a bit older? What kind of age groups were they?
So honestly, it was a little bit of everything for me at the time. One reason I love being over here is because you can earn a good living just off coaching and doing things you enjoy. Which somewhat, unless you're in the right environment back at home, there's you're not going to be able to do that. There's not every opportunity to go and do that. But I ended up volunteering. I've kind of done a bit of everything over the last 3 years. I ended up volunteering at another college at the time, involved in their programs, and then since then, in high school, like the high school game, like secondary school is a bit bigger over here. That side of the game is bigger in America than it is at home. So that stuff, club coaching, and then I'm self-employed and went for a period of time where we was doing private coaching, so like one-on-one private sessions, which is huge over here as well, way bigger than it is back at home. And then it was just recently where I kind of got the opportunity to get back involved in the college game as a coach. So that's exciting. So I've done a little bit of everything, but I think I prefer being the more knowledgeable side of the game rather than running camps and things like that. So it's been a little bit of everything, but it's been good.
And it's kind of, I suppose it's a massive industry over there anyway. But it's interesting that I live in Leeds, so we've obviously got Jesse Marsh is in Leeds managing the teams. There's loads of American fans started supporting Leeds, it seems, because of a few players and the coach and stuff. It does seem to have it's kind of grown, hasn't it, from both sides. And we'll move on to the women's game in a bit. Obviously, the women's game in America was probably leading the way for a little time over this side, and then it's kind of the influences go back and forth, don't they? So it has. So what are the levels and the standards and the size of things like over there? Is it's I suppose it's big business.
Yeah, it is. It is. The games definitely grew even over the last. I think it started to pick up just before my time over here. But even since I've been here these last I think it's 7 years now. It's definitely got bigger. You find more kids wanting to get involved in the sport, because I think before it, it was baseball, American football, basketball, and no one really else looked anywhere else other than those three sports. So now you're starting to see, we just where I live in northwestern Indiana, we have three huge clubs over here, with a lot of kids involved. So they're definitely it's definitely up and coming for sure, and I think it will continue to grow, especially if the US women's national team continues to do well, and hopefully the men, even with them being in England's group for the World Cup, is huge. So it's definitely growing. In terms of standard, I think it's slightly different. Like the way it's structured over here, obviously in England, we spoke about, you go through the academies, and that's your route into the pro game. Over here, it's all about going to college and going to get your education. So most players from an early age will go and play at a club, which is just like playing for a local club back at home, with probably a little bit more, because of the lack of number of them, because of the sport compared to back at home. It's probably a little bit higher quality than what you would call like local football back at home. And then kids will play high school, and then their ultimate goal at the end of the day is probably to go and play in college. Very few will have the intention to maybe go and play pro, but the end goal for most people seems to be playing college and going to get your education and then kind of seeing where that leads you. But I actually think it's a different way of playing the game as well. A lot over here with a lot of coaches. You're starting to see more European coaches now over here as well getting involved in the game. But I think before it's slowly transitioning, but it's very much physical. It's very much about speed. It's very much, whereas back at home, your technical ability would always probably come first. Over here, and I think it's because they're used to American football and they're used to basketball, and it's kind of like, the faster you are, the more beneficial it's going to be, and the more powerful you are, the more beneficial it's going to be. But so I would say it's a little bit more of a physical game. But in terms of standard, comparing it to even like the youth team back at home, it's, you play at some good colleges over here, it's very comparable, if not better. Just because of the number of how broad it is across the country, and even now you're getting players that have come and played at good levels of youth team programs back at home that are playing good standard of college now, which makes the game over here even better. So
it's been interesting watching the Welcome to Wrexham documentary since that's come out, because obviously it's been made kind of mostly for an American audience, because they kind of explain, they have this crazy thing, relegation and promotion, and you can get through all the leagues, and then you can take a really tiny team and get to the top. And it's kind of interesting watching that, the things that we take for granted over here is just the way that you do things is completely different, I suppose, because of that American football model of, have your franchises and no one gets relegated. It's just someone wins the Super Bowl, don't they? It's an interesting difference, isn't it, that you get. Have you seen much of the Welcome to Wrexham?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it. No, but I can imagine what kind of, how people over here view it as completely different. I mean, because it is, the whole promotion relegation system is not something they've really entertained in any sport really over here. It's just not how they do things. Even your big sports, your baseballs, footballs, basketballs, there's not a promotion relegation system in that. And I think football just takes that kind of structure and adds it to the football game over here. So it's definitely different. There's pros and cons of both, but I think it's hard for sometimes people to get used to that. I think actually I actually had conversations about that with numerous people over here who are involved in the game, and they're like, wouldn't it be so cool if that was the case over here, where you're actually playing for something, you can get relegated, and it would be, but I don't think it'll ever happen.
No, I think it'd be really interesting, because if they ever even muted the idea over here of taking away relegation, people would hate the idea, wouldn't they? Because it's part of that chance that you might fail.
Right.
It's kind of quite a seductive thing, almost, as much as promotion is.
It makes the game more interesting, but I don't think they'll ever make that thing over here. I don't see that happening, especially in the near future.
So now you've obviously moved on to you're Indiana University Northwest head women's soccer coach. So kind of moved into the women's game now. So what's that been like, adjusting to?
It's been good. I mean, since I graduated from college, I've somewhat been involved in the women's game just through private coaching and things like that, and being around that standard of player over here on the women's side. So I think at first it took some adjusting, but no, I mean, I love it right now. I took over a group, probably a struggling group at the college level, and they've reacted well. It's definitely different from coaching boys. Like I mentioned before, the beginning of our chat, the women take a lot more. It's more relational. It's more man management, almost conversations. But no, overall I love it. It's great. It took a little adjusting to, but I think I actually somewhat prefer. Not many people would say that, but I think I somewhat prefer coaching the women's game. But I think that's down to kind of a coaching style of mine. It's not. I don't think it's anything against the boys' game over here. It's more to do with the way I like to coach, and the women are quick to listen to. They're so coachable for the most part that they're just willing to listen and take it on board, and you can have much more of an influence. Whereas the boys sometimes think they know a little bit more than they do. But I think which every boy is guilty of in their growing up stages. But no, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So is that kind of your? I suppose you've only been in that role, haven't you, for a while? So is that kind of looking at kind of opportunities in that area? Then I suppose I suppose it can lead anywhere, can't it? In the role that you're in at the moment.
Yeah, I think when I graduated, I always wanted to get involved in the college game. It's a difficult thing to do. Usually the route to doing it is you would go and be a graduate assistant somewhere, which means you would go and do your master's degree and they would pay for it as well as you being a coach. And they give you a small stipend, and after that you'd probably go and be an assistant somewhere, just work your way up the ranks. And although I volunteered at a college to begin with, it was never really an option for me just because I got married so young. I couldn't really. Responsibility at that point was to earn money, and that wasn't the route that was going to earn me money at the time. So yeah, I kind of just put it at the back of my mind and left it on the side for a while, and it actually worked out perfectly that the college is right around the corner from where we live right now, and they were, with the struggling program that they are, they were struggling to find a coach for the type of school that it was. So it was a good opportunity for me to get involved. But in terms of the future, yeah, I don't really know. I think for me right now, it's a case of just taking it, year by year, helping the program to get to a better place than it is right now. And yeah, I think if that leads me to another place where it's moving up in the college game, then good. But at the same time, you mentioned it before, America's a big place, and what comes with that is probably a lot of moving around as well. So yeah, for me right now, I'd love to go and coach at even a higher level in the college game, but just taking it year by year and seeing what I can do with this program first, and kind of seeing where that leads.
And like you mentioned, you kind of have laid down roots and everything, haven't you? Because you have got married and got a. I was watching a video with you in it actually last night where you were talking about your wife. Where was she from again? Is she from Indiana?
She's from Indiana, yeah. So she went and played volleyball at the same college that I played at, but she's from this area, so we ended up moving back here, and that's what brought me to Northwest Indiana. But yeah, so it was a big adjustment. I think we got married 6 months out of being in college, so I think I was 20. Don't want to say 23. Yeah, 23 at the time. So I think for me, getting married early over here, it was something I was ready to commit to. But it's very weird because you have your friends from back home, and that's getting married early back at home is not really a thing. So whereas over here, it's all about getting married early. So it's definitely different. Even now, I know 4 friends alone from England that are over here now that are all married and the same age as me. So yeah, it was a big adjustment, but yeah, that was the biggest reason I couldn't really get involved in the college game straight away, because I was suddenly had a little bit more responsibility.
Well, when you find the one, don't you? So
yeah.
Do you kind of get over here much, or do the family get over to you much? Because obviously you've got people either side of the pond, haven't you?
Yeah. So my family came. I actually have a real small family. I have both parents and one brother, younger brother, and then even extended family is pretty small. But they all managed for the most part to come across for the wedding, and that's actually the only time they've been over here. And then we were hoping to go back not long after that, but then COVID hit, so that was kind of put a spanner in the works. But I want to say we've been over. Is it twice now? No, I think since we've been married, we've probably been over once, which was last October. It was just after COVID was happening. We managed to get on a plane and get over there for 10 days, and then we're actually going to be coming out soon at the same time at the end of October for 8 or 9 days. Yeah, so that's something I'm looking forward to. Yeah, because I mean, for me, growing up family has been huge. So that's obviously the big downside about being over here. But yeah, we try to get back as much as we possibly can, but COVID has, even if that's, once every 2 years or once a year, hopefully, then that's something we'd look to do. But yeah, COVID had a massive impact on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think at one stage, I think the time before I was back home in October, it had to have been 4 years since I last came home before that. And most of that was down to COVID. I was graduating school, and it wasn't really a period of time where I was coming home.
Yeah.
And then by the time we could, it was like COVID hit. So yeah, so we'll be back in October, and it'll be a good chance to see family and friends again.
Do you keep in touch with football and stuff over in Europe? Then I suppose you've got a bit of a time difference, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm a Forest fan, so this has been a great year for us. So yeah, I mean, especially now we're back in the Premier League, it's been a case of where I can, because over here, they show a lot of games. You can basically any Premier League game for sure that you want to see, you can see. And so yeah, I'm always involved in that. And then every now and then I'll check in and see how Chesterfield are doing, just because it's somewhere that obviously in my past. So yeah, I keep in touch with it as much as I possibly can, and I love to. My wife will be annoyed every now and then, but I love to watch a good game at the weekend. I've not lost that side of me.
And you still obviously a pupil of the game if you're into coaching and stuff, aren't you? So I suppose it's learning, isn't it? It's not a social activity. You can.
Yeah, no. For me, it's like it's a bit of both. Yeah, like you learn from watching the game all the time, but and there's different things that you pick up, and whether it's watching a Premier League game, whether it's watching a lower league game, or even just watching more college sports over here, like there's always opportunities to learn as a coach and watch things and kind of see how different people do things. But a lot of it for me as well, especially watching the Premier League, it's just the enjoyment of it. If there's a game on TV, no matter who's playing, I've got time to watch it. I'm not going to not choose to watch it. It's just something fun for me. It always has been. So I don't think I'll ever lose that side of me.
No, if it's in your blood, it's in your blood. Definitely.
Right.
So to finish off then, obviously you went and did all this quite young. You kind of took the leap and did it, and it's obviously worked out. Obviously it's obviously worked out grand. So if there's any other younger players then that have kind of find themselves in your position like you were then, and that kind of get that opportunity, what kind of advice would you give them?
Do it. I think for me, I can put myself into other players' shoes. When I was talking before, when I was young, it was difficult for me to make that decision, especially at that age, moving away from your parents, or leaving home, leaving the people that you grew up with, and kind of going into a world that's completely unknown. It can definitely be an anxious time, nervous time, but for me, you're going to have ups and downs with it, but it's the best decision I've ever made, in terms of just the opportunities that are out here. And you just see it, you just see a complete different world. You grow up, and for me it was like this, and I imagine for a lot of young English, aspiring footballers at the time, it's very similar. You grow up, you're in your school environment, you grow up in a similar area, you're around that kind of, it's all you know. It's all you're around your same people all the time, you're around the same players, and you don't know anything different. Whereas coming over here just opens up your mind completely to just although it's not drastically different, just how the world is different, what else there is out there. Even if it's a case of you coming over and deciding it's not for you for, after 6 months or a year, you have seen it, you know what it's like. It opens up your mind a little bit, and it's just a massive learning experience for you in general. Even if you don't end up staying out there after college, there's a lot of English guys of my friends that have come over here, played there 4 years, and gone back home, and they've now got a life back in England. But they're doing that with a whole new perspective of what life is like elsewhere other than where they grew up. So my biggest advice is just do it, experience it, just make the jump, and kind of make your decision after that from there. But yeah, it can be a difficult decision, but you sometimes have to do them.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a few ex-Chesterfield players over there. I think doing bits of coaching. I think Paul Shaw's over there, and I think Mark DeBoller's over there, and I think there's a few.
Yeah, there's a few. Even in my era, I know for sure. The guys that with my team, Jordan Wall-Shaw came over, played over here. He actually went back home for a little bit. He's actually now coaching over here as an assistant coach at a college. Oliver Brock, who was my age at youth team, he's over here. He's actually married with kids now over here, so he's over here living his life. And then there was another one or two more. Lewis Sugden came over he was one of the ones that came over, made the jump, enjoyed his time, but just missed home too much and ended up going home. So he was an example of someone that came over here that didn't end up like in the situation I am, but I'm sure his experience would wouldn't change it.
Having that chance,
yeah.
Great.
So, there's a few that make the jump.
Fabulous. Great. Well, thanks for coming on and having a chat. It's really interesting to find out what you've been up to, and that obviously I've spoken to players that have played 500 games for Chesterfield and
right
and kind of had so many stories to tell of football matches and stuff, but I always find these ones more fascinating, just because you find that people have made a journey and then gone into some really fascinating things around the world. It's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's just important. Like, I mean, I'm probably the opposite. I'll probably love, I've watched a few before of your podcast with other people, like, Dean Morgan, just kind of seeing different experiences like that. But people sometimes don't realize that these footballers is a very small window for getting involved in that, and there's a large window of people that end up not making it and have to get used to kind of other opportunities, and there's a lot of them. So it's important for kind of people to know that, and just kind of keep in touch with what these guys are doing once they leave the football industry. So I think it's a good thing you're doing with kind of hearing all aspects of it as well. So
I'm just glad you got off the checkouts at Morrison's.
I know, right? Yeah, that was a 6-month period of my life that I wasn't too thrilled with, but again, another learning experience. So
after I finished university, I worked in a bingo hall for a year to pay off my overdraft and everything. And at the time, I completely hated it, but I look back on it and it was like being in a Peter Kay sitcom every shift. So it was, you kind of look back on it and take the positives from the experience, don't you, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's always positives in every situation. So yeah, I wouldn't go back to it, but I took a lot from it.
Got staff discount, I suppose.
Right.